In Climate Watch, a new study out this week says deforestation in the Amazon is up. That's according to an environmental watchdog group in Brazil.
The group has monitored the Amazon rainforest for the last 2 decades. It said on Monday that the pace of deforestation has increased 20% in the last 9 months. Some analysts believe uncontrolled logging and land invasion for the loss of vegetation. Andre Guimarães is the executive director of Amazon's Environmental Research Institute, and he joins us now. Good to see you.
Hi, Vlad. Nice to be here.
So you and I were in Brazil just a few weeks ago talking about this in a story that we did for CBS this morning. But I want you to explain to our audience about this increased deforestation that's happened in Brazil and why you see it as a danger.
Well, the Amazon is crucial for Brazil, and I would say for the world, when it comes to climate change, when it comes to mitigation of climate change, when it comes to supply water for the agricultural production in Brazil. We have to remember that Brazil feeds about 1 billion people every day. So the Brazilian agriculture is fundamental to the world. Thus, the Amazon is fundamental to the Brazilian agriculture and to the world. So it's a tremendous concern these days, these announcements of an increase in deforestation, because that puts into at risk, this is important responsibility that the country has with the world.
What about the current President Bolsonaro? His policies, are they helping or hurting?
Yeah, right now we are very concerned about some of the new policies that are out there. However, the checks and balances systems in Brazil are working. For example, this week we've had a tremendous debate in Brazilian Congress with regard to changes in the Forest Code. The Forest Code is a fundamental legislation to protect forests, particularly in private areas, in private properties. But the bill didn't pass. So that's a good sign that the president can try, but the society is paying attention, and the Congress is working and making the checks and balances work.
But is the president supportive of protecting the environment?
There are mixed signals there.
Okay.
Sometimes you see the Minister of Environment, for example, saying that they should concentrate their efforts into the cities and not in the rural areas. Cities are important. But as I said before, rural areas and the Amazon protected and the central savannas protected, they are important both for our economies and to supply water for the cities. So the challenge is to work all of these agendas together. So far, the government has sent mixed signals to the Brazilian society, and I think it requires us to be paying attention and mobilized to offset any kind of negative impacts of these measures.
So one of the things that you just talked about, and you and I spoke about in Brazil, was how vital the Amazon is just to the rest of the planet. Because I suspect that there will be people in this country or in Europe who will say, well, it seems so far and it seems so remote from where I am, living in an urban environment here in New York City, for example. And one of the scientists I spoke to when we were there in Brazil said to think about the Amazon as the air conditioner for the planet. What does that mean?
Well, it's the air conditioning because it sort of controls the temperature in the southern hemisphere, with also impact in the northern hemisphere because of its size and its importance. But it's important to say that the Amazon is home for about 20% of the species that exist on Earth. Remember that we have life in this planet for about 2.53 billion years, and 20% of the solutions that nature have found for having life in this planet are stored in the Amazon. So the Amazon is important today because it produces water. It's important today because there are 30 million Brazilians living there, of which about half a million are indigenous groups in 200 different ethnies with 200 different cultures and languages. So it's important from a standpoint of culture, from a standpoint of environmental services like water, but it's also important for the biodiversity that may be, that may provide the solutions for the food in the future, or the medicines for the future, or the cosmetics for the future. They may be stored in the nature that is protected in the Amazon.
We don't know what treasures are sort of locked in there.
Exactly.
So then you can understand why deforestation would be an issue. I'm curious about the Brazilian people. Do they consider the Amazon sort of a point of pride? Would this be something that the people would sort of rise up and demand action from their politicians?
Brazilians are amongst the societies with more concern about the environment. So sustainability is an issue that people talk on the Sunday meetings in the family. So it's something that everybody talks about every day. But protecting the Amazon is such a complex challenge that it's hard for ordinary people to understand the risks associated to deforestation and the opportunities that are associated to protecting the Amazon. So the challenge that the environmental community that I'm a part of is precisely to communicate better with the society the importance of maintaining that tremendous treasury that we have standing.
But people are going to say, I mean, there has to be some deforestation. I mean, there are riches in there to be harvested that the Brazilian people in the country can benefit from and the world could benefit from.
Absolutely, absolutely. About 20% of the Amazon is already cleared. So that's enough, right? Scientists would say that if we go beyond a certain level, some would say that 20% is that level, some would say that 30% is that level, is a point of no return. So if we cross that level of deforestation, there might be a situation in which we can't return back to where we were before. Mm-hmm. So it's a tremendous risk to continue this process. So if we have 20% already cleared, let's make sure that we use well that and protect the forest for the future generations.
Yeah, on one hand, and this is a discussion that we had when I went up 160 feet on that tower to look at some of the equipment that you use to measure the atmosphere. On one hand, we understand that the more trees you chop down, the more carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. On the other hand, somebody might say, look, we need to feed ourselves, we need to feed our people, so we need to clear this land so that we can continue to use the land for agriculture. Mm-hmm. And that is an important, some people might say, look, climate change is something that you can worry about if you are wealthy or if you have means, but for people who are hungry or who are starving, a country's ability to feed itself and to also be able to export agriculture to the rest of the world is also really important.
Absolutely. Well, about a third of Brazilian economy is directly related to land use. I'm not just talking about the farmers and ranchers, but also the industry that supplies the inputs and the equipment. So 1 in every 3 jobs in Brazil depends upon agriculture to exist. So if agriculture in Brazil depends upon the Amazon to produce water, that means that if I have 3 kids, one of my kids will be employed in the future if we protect the Amazon. Simple as that.
It's really great.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you very much, Andre, for stopping by. It's really fascinating. And the work that you are doing in educating Brazilians and the rest of the world is really important. So we're glad you're able to do it here.
Thank you very much, Vlad. This kind of partnership must go on.
Yeah, thank you.